How's it, everybody? And a warm welcome to the NFT show. I'm so sorry that I'm late. I just had some internet problems. Had to restart everything, but we seem to be working now. So thank you for joining me. My name's Philip Kalinko, and I've got a special show for you tonight. Tonight we're going to be looking at my personal journey and my personal investment thesis and what has held me in good stead financially throughout my time. So, since entering this bear market, I've had some of my friends and followers and Discord members reach out to me in total panic as they've watched their crypto and NFT investments go down 80 to 90% and require the money for everyday basics like food and rent. This is the reason that I wanted to make this video, because I believe that it's extremely important to address this and to try guide people who are only seeing YouTube videos about how to make hundreds of thousands of dollars overnight and in various ways. I want to stress that from my experience, there are no substantial get-rich-quick schemes. For the most part, it takes decades of hard work, dedication, sacrifice, and cautious investing to create and grow real wealth. So I wanted to talk to you about something that I believe is very important to cover, and I think for many is not being understood, and that is the way that I see money and the different investment strategies that I've employed to create long-term wealth. Know from the beginning that I'm a very risk-adverse person. So if you want to know how to become a millionaire overnight, there's many YouTube videos you can watch, but this one is not for you. So with all that out the way, let me tell you a little bit about my professional life and how I managed to make myself financially secure in my life. It's important to understand that I'm just telling you my story and how I personally view money and what I've done in an effort to try and guide and help you. But I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. And as always, you should always do your own research. I also don't think that I'm special in any way. I believe anyone can achieve financial freedom if they are willing to put in the work and be savvy with whatever money they are able to make. Although obviously different people's circumstances make it easier or less hard. I truly hope that this video is useful to you in your life and that you get value, regardless of what stage of life you are in, what country you're from, where you were born, or where you're at now. I'm going to start by taking you through my work history, and I'll then end with some pictures, some lessons, and some fundamental money rules that I've picked up and that I employ in my life. Even though I can now afford to take a small percentage of my wealth and use it for riskier plays like crypto, initially I didn't do this. Also, it's very important to note that in different countries, interest rates are different everywhere in the world. Here in South Africa, interest rates are relatively high generally, currently at about 7%, and also home prices vary from country to country. So again, I'm just telling you what's worked for me in my life here in South Africa. So with all that out the way, let's get straight into it. All right, so rewind 21 years. I was 19 years old and I didn't have a cent to my name. I had nothing. I was not a trust fund baby. I had no financial assistance at all, and also no one that I could call if I didn't have enough money to buy myself a meal. Looking back now, I truly believe this was a huge blessing because starving is not an option. It was very important to me to go to university. While I was in university, I was working 2 jobs. I was a waiter and I sold nutritional supplements in pharmacies on weekends. I had a rule that no matter what I earned each month, no matter how little, I would put 20% aside from every paycheck into a standard savings account with my bank. Even if that meant I could not eat out that month, or if I had to not have any toiletries, I barely ever broke this rule. 20% straight away when I got money in my hand went into the savings account. The reason it needed to be a standard savings account was in case that something unexpected happened and I needed that money immediately, I knew it was always available. There was no risk of me losing that money, and although I only got small interest on it, it worked for me at the beginning. Then as I started saving a bit more, I created a separate bank account, an investment account or a call account where you have to give notice to take out your money, and that improved my interest slightly. I was just coming out every month, barely making anything at all. But then I got an opportunity through a friend to help someone sell some products. So a good friend of mine, Ellie, his mother's friend's husband passed away. And the husband was an importer of some goods, a few different items, but it was a small business. And she had absolutely no idea who he was selling the stuff to. He had no records. And she was basically left with very little money, no husband. Husband just passed away, but this warehouse of stock. So she was complaining to my friend's mother, who was her friend, saying, she wishes she could sell the stock. And Ellie's mom went to Ellie and said, listen, can't you and your friends help to this woman, to this lady who's just lost her husband, to try and sell some of this stock? So we decided we would help. And we went to visit this warehouse. It was in a huge mess, just small warehouse packed to the roof with boxes. And we took one of everything with her permission, and we started walking around and trying to sell it door to door. We got kicked out of markets because we didn't realize we couldn't just set up a table. And to cut a very long story short, we ended up selling all of this lady's stock. And so the customers would phone us back and say, you sold us this folder. We're looking for pens. And then Ellie would say, no, we don't do pens. And I would nudge him and say, no, we do pens. Well, anything that anyone wants to buy. And so we built up a business, and, we started marketing, and we started phoning new clients and setting up meetings. And so I was now at a stage where I was running this tiny business. I was working the same 2 jobs, and I was also studying. But, I had a really clearly defined goal. And that was to get enough money saved in order to put a deposit down on a house. And that goal kept me motivated and kept me going. So after around a year, Perkel was now needing a lot of time. And Perkel's my business now, and I simply didn't have enough time to continue with all of it. So I decided to drop the waiting job, and I continued studying and selling supplements on the weekend. And so as it grew a few months later, I didn't have the time for the pharmacy. So I took a huge leap of faith, because those were my real only 2 guaranteed sources of income, was waiting and the supplements. And I decided to work on Perkel full time while still studying. And the first few months were really, really hard. Some months I made a lot less than what I was making selling supplements and waiting, which wasn't a lot. But I think this just drove me harder to work on Perkel. I had to make it work. And for the first few years of Perkel, I worked literally 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. I didn't have any money to hire someone to build a website. So I took Microsoft Word, and we created the website on Microsoft Word. Ellie, who's a tech guy and very clever with technology, gave us a IP address that was bouncing around, and we literally hosted the first website, and I'll show you some pictures at the end. We hosted the first website from my computer at home, that if the power went off at home, the website was down, right? And when we had more than 5 people on the website, I would just hear my computer's fans just blowing. Then I knew we were busy. We had 5 people on the website. And slowly but surely, customers came back. We lost some, but money started to come in. Eventually I was able to get a real website. Then I was able to get my first staff member, and so on and so forth. So after about 18 months of this stage, I was in a position where I could buy my first property. Because I really believe that renting, if you can avoid it, is really, really crucial. Renting is necessary. You need a roof over your head. But if you can avoid that and rather be paying off your own property, I do think that is the first step to financial freedom. So I was able to get my first property. I got a bond from the bank, so a home loan. The home was not in a good area, and it was really in bad shape. It was actually in South Africa. There was this boxer, Philip Ndor, really, really famous boxer. He was like 31 wins, 0 losses, and he got a deal with Fila, the clothing store, and they had to a sponsorship deal, and they had to do a physical on him. And they did a physical, and they found he had a tumor on his brain, and he couldn't carry on boxing. This was his life. So this house that I bought used to be his. But when he learned that he couldn't continue boxing, he fucked up that house like you can't believe. So I went and I started running my business from there. There was a separate section in the front, and then I had 2 bedrooms at the back, a kitchen and a bathroom, which was separate. And I slowly started putting some money into the house to fix it up, and fix the broken windows and fix the doors. And it was really a huge achievement for me. And it led me to my next goal, which was to try and put all extra money that I could into the bond, into the home loan, so I could reduce the interest that I was paying. Some months I couldn't do this, but other months I was able to. And sometimes I would deposit into the bank twice or 3 times a month into that home loan, so that I was reducing that interest payment. At that stage, interest rates were about 6%, and the bank adds an additional 2%. So I added an extra 8% guaranteed return by putting any extra money in there. And I didn't want to waste money on interest if I could avoid it. And again, sometimes it was lower, sometimes it was higher, but it was risk-free, guaranteed 8% return. The nice thing about this was that if I ever needed the extra money, I had put it in the bond, I could always take that money out. It was an access bond. So it was almost like an investment account for me. And the goal was to pay that off as quickly as I possibly can. I think it's important to stop here and just say that I honestly believe the first step of real wealth is home ownership. And I would encourage everyone to aim for this. And then I got really, really lucky. The house that I'd bought and spent about a year fixing up, and now was perfect for my business and to live in. It was on the freeway, on the highway. And I'd put a big Perkel sign up, and I'll show you some pictures as well. And everyone driving on the highway, and it's a busy highway right by Sandton, for anyone that knows South Africa. There was a big Perkel sign there. And out of the blue, the estate agent who had sold me the house phoned me and said to me, can she come and visit me? So I said, with pleasure. So she came, and she said to me, look, I know you've just gotten settled here, but I've got someone who wants to buy your house, the house next to yours, the house next to that, knock them down and make offices and make a huge advertising billboard outside. So I said, look, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in selling. I need a place to run my business. I need a place to sleep. I can't start looking again. She said to me, but you haven't even heard the offer. To cut a long story short, after a bit of negotiation, the offer was double what I'd put into the property, and what I paid, the total value of the property times 2x, including what I'd invested in it. So, I needed a place to run the business. I didn't want to move and have customers not being able to be served. I wasn't sure if I should take it. So I phoned my late dad at that stage, who was always available to me for advice. And I asked him what to do. And he said, double. And I said, double. And he said to me, full, give them your car and take it, sign, take it. So I didn't give them my car, but I took it. And it was just great luck. So then I used that money to put a big deposit on a much nicer home. At that stage, I just met Bianca. So we're talking about 15 years ago now. Who's now my wife, and we were dating. So I also Perkel. I had 2 staff members in Perkel, and I wanted a separate house and a separate office. So I moved into a much nicer area, nothing fancy, but much nicer. Got a small, beautiful house, but I couldn't also afford to buy offices. So I started renting office space, and I had a strong goal again of one day buying a small office or a house that I convert into an office, and it being owned by me and not renting. Because as I've said, I really think home ownership is the best way to go, and renting is a huge waste if you can avoid it. And so I continued saving every single month, continued paying extra money into the bond as I was doing the old one. And to cut a very long story short, around 1 year or so later, I managed to put a deposit on a property for my business, and I was able to stop renting. So now at this point, there's no crypto, there's no There's no risky investments. There's no stock market. There's no RA, retirement funds. There's nothing. But I have 2 properties, and my goal is to pay these properties off so that I can not be paying the interest that I was paying. I had my accountants draw up a rental agreement between me and this new property for my business. And basically, per kill, my business was now renting this new property from me. So that was a nice additional income for me. And it took around 4 or 5 years from there, until I had fully paid off both properties. And it was sheer hard work, sacrifice, and commitment to just push on. I still kept the home loans open so that if I ever needed that money, I could just take from it. I didn't need an overdraft. I had that. So I'd keep it like 95% paid up, the home loans. So I wasn't paying a huge interest every month, but I could still access that fund. And actually, the business property, I still actually have that bond open if I ever need that money. So now both properties were effectively paid off, and I could start looking for other investments, right? So this is where it gets interesting. So up to now, what we've established from just my perspective, not financial advice, if you can avoid renting, do that. If you can own a home, do that, and pay off your debt, whether it be the home loan paid off quicker than the 20 years or whatever you take it out for, or credit cards. Pay the full amount every single month. Don't let it compound and compound and compound. Anyway, I met with accountants, and they suggested to me to get a retirement fund. So basically every month a RA, a retirement annuity, where you put a certain amount away every month. It gets automatically debited, and that's tax-free, whatever gains you get. So I set up a small RA, starting to think of retirement. And something interesting with retirement, anyone who's ever looked at it, let's just say you need $3,000 a month in order to live. You would need about $3 million, depending on how old you are and a lot of different things. But at my stage now, if my expenses are $3,000 a month, I would need $3 million in order to be able to live off the interest without touching the capital amount. And obviously, you've got to take inflation into account. Every year, things get more expensive. So I would need $3 million now in order to do that. If my expenses were $3,000 a month. So the accountant suggested a RA just as one investment vehicle, and they also suggested that I get a share portfolio, a stock portfolio. So I found a reputable investment bank in South Africa who would invest in good companies with long-term potential. So I tried to do it. I tried to buy some shares, and it didn't work very well. Sometimes it's just better to get the experts. They have a long-term view on stocks, so they only buy blue chips. They only buy ones that they're really bullish on. They monitor them. If they're less bullish on them, they sell, but it's not really trading. They buy for long term. And, if it dips, it dips. We're in it for the long term. So I started asking them to invest. I would put a bit of extra money in. And then after a while, they suggested that I also open an account with overseas shares, because the returns on the overseas shares were much better at that particular stage than they were on the local shares. And so my money started working for me. Earning dividends over time, increasing in value as the companies grew. There were one or two that ended up not doing so well, that they sold, and so on and so forth. And they also ensured that I had a very good mix of shares. So there is tech shares, healthcare, retail, gas, so that it's well managed. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And in order to diversify and split my risk, I also invested in metals, so physical gold, platinum, and things like that. And I really believe it's very important to diversify your portfolio. Have different investments just in case something happens with one or the other. Diversification is something that I've always done and is very, very important to me. Then I think it's also important here to point out that I was still not invested in anything very risky. So everything I had was low risk. Yes, the rewards weren't 20x a year, but anything high risk was too scary for me. I worked too hard. I was too scared to lose it. I'd been at nothing, and I knew what it meant. A separate story that I'll tell you another time. I was legitimately homeless for about 2 weeks. Legitimately. No home, nowhere to sleep, would stay awake at night in parks and sleep during the day because I was too scared to sleep at night. And I think when you've been through that and had literally nothing and no one that was able, even though there was love, there was no one that was able to bail me out. You develop a risk adverse attitude, and that brings me to cryptos and NFTs. It's only the last 18 months that I've been investing in crypto and NFTs, and it's only ever at the most been a maximum of 5% of my total savings and net asset value, shares, and all of that. I'm not willing to put in more than 5% of money that I don't need into these risky assets. And I think it's so important for anyone in the crypto space and the NFT space to realize that crypto and NFTs are very risky investments. The lure of a 50x and a 100x, which is all that anyone talks about. No one is talking about the risk. You go onto YouTube and I made $1 million and I made $100,000. That lure that people are seeing, it makes people incorrectly think that it's easy money. And for the most part, from my experience, there is no such thing as easy money. It doesn't exist long term. And the vast majority of people that are in cryptos and NFTs currently, with the market like it is, are in a loss position. There's only a very, very few that are not, and they got lucky. So my advice to all my followers and any crypto enthusiasts is to play with money that you can easily afford to lose. And only money that if you lose it won't affect your lifestyle at all. Do not play with money you need for essentials and things that you need to pay rent. Because if you urgently need that money, you will be forced to sell at a huge loss. And you only really make or lose when you sell. So you want it to be money that you do not need and a small percentage of that money. To sum up, no matter how much you earn, work out a budget and try and make sure that you save as much as possible every single month by cutting unnecessary expenses. I read a book quite a long time ago called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Very well-written financial book, basic, that anyone can read and understand. And it really spoke about that no matter what you're earning, you can save a little bit. And if you're earning $1 million a month and you're spending $1.2 million a month, you are going to run into financial difficulties. If you are earning $1,000 a month and you're saving $100 of that, you are going to one day be able to be wealthy. So I do suggest, I'm going to show you what that book looks like. I do suggest that you get Rich Dad, Poor Dad and read it. It also talks about how as you get more money to play with that you don't need, that money can work for you. And as I've said, putting it in RAs, putting it in shares, putting it in precious metals and things like that, right? An RA is great if you're in that stage, but work towards paying off your debt first, including your home loan, including your credit card debt. I've honestly never, ever not paid the full amount of my credit card at the end of the month, ever. Even when I needed it, I've never done that because the interest is just crazy. All right, weigh up risk versus reward of your investments. The risk of you losing all of it, can you afford to lose it? And what is the chance that it could go to zero versus how much could you make off that trade? And be very, very careful about risky trades. Diversify heavily. Only play high-risk plays with a tiny amount of your money. And from my experience, there are no shortcuts to real wealth. It takes hard work, a lot of time, a lot of sacrifice. Time that I would be with my family, with friends, that I was sitting there working. And I'll show you some pictures. And also sometimes that we need to go for our dreams without overthinking them. If I'd thought about leaving my day jobs of being a waiter and selling supplements to run my own tiny, tiny business, and the fact that, for many months I didn't make any money in that business and I wasn't even able to take anything out because there was nothing. If I overthought that, I would never, ever have taken that leap. Sometimes throwing yourself in the deep end and just taking that leap with no other way out gives you a drive that you have to make it happen. I was also very lucky that I did that before having a wife and children. So I didn't have the expenses that I have now and the responsibilities of schooling, medical insurance, life insurance. I mean, I can rattle off the amount of things that I need to make sure I can cover. So it's not so easy when you've got those sort of commitments. So start early. if you can, if you're watching this, you're 18, you're 19, start at this time. This is the time for you to take risks, because it's a lot more difficult to do so later on in life. Watch The Secret. If you haven't heard about The Secret, I'll show you what it is. Incredible. It's a book and a film. I made a vision board with a beautiful house and a beautiful wife and beautiful children, and thank God it came true. But look at that. Look at The Secret. I'm going to show you links and pictures now, and really get to it. So I think, let me do that. Let me show you some pictures, and then I'll finish it off for you guys. So following the story, this is our first website that was hosted. I'll share it now. That was hosted from my computer. Okay, it was done on MS Word. It's just an image of it. It's not still up, so I'll just make it bigger. This was the very first website done in MS Word. You can even, for guys old enough, can see the fonts. And you would click, it would take you to the different categories. And this was run off my personal PC. I designed this. I know it's not amazing. And also in the beginning, I did corporate gifts. I did computers. I didn't know what was going to stick, but I tried whatever it was. Then we upgraded, still off my PC, but I redesigned it. The big thing was it had this bar over here at the top, and redesigned it, showing all the gifts. And then you had your different categories over here. And then we sold advertising on the side. This was the early days of the internet. I mean, this was 20 years ago, right? Then we moved to this website over here, a very basic one, but at least a proper website being hosted by a proper company. And then the next website was this one here. Let's make it a bit smaller. This one here. Then we started doing auctions with some of the gifts. I mean, honestly, we'd try anything. So we had Perkel auctions, we had Perkel gifts, if you clicked here, and Perkel computers. This was the Perkel computers website. Not easy, the computer game. The prices change so often, and it's so competitive, and you've got to keep everything up to date. Not so easy. And that moves us onto our current website now, which is what we use now. Obviously, a proper company looks after this, and I don't have to do everything myself anymore. But that's the journey of Perkel through the websites. If I show you here, this is me when I was young with my USN, which is a supplement, my USN lanyard. This is my sister Daniela next to me. I'm in my parents' house. My mom is an artist. You can see behind me is one of her paintings. That's just to show you even the shirt is a USN shirt. That was me selling supplements on the weekend. Then we come here. This was my sign on the first property that I bought. This was my sign. Some of it. I think I got a bit. There we go. The retail corporate trade supplier, Perkel Gifts, over 25,000 unique gifts and gadgets under one roof. And that was my office and my house all in one. And I really bought it because of this sign on the highway. Then this was inside that first property that I managed to purchase. This was the office area. We just had all our desks together on this side. Here was a waiting area over here. And then here was where we would meet with customers. And then around there at the back was all my personal stuff, the kitchen, the bathroom, the 2 bedrooms, and whatever. So this was my first property after I had fixed it up. You can see there's no broken windows or walls. Then this is me in the office that I rented after I sold this property and bought a home. Again, I've now met Bianca, and we wanted our own home away from the business. This was the office that I was renting. At the time I was renting it, you can see a young Philip sitting there, some stock at the bottom over here. It was a 5-room office with a boardroom and all the other staff in there. This is when Bianca and I met, a picture of us. And this is me in my office today. That's Lestarina, one of the ladies who works for me. She's a receptionist at the front. You can see here some more of that office that I own today, the one that Perkel rents from me. This is my office today. This is where I sit during the day. It's an old picture. Some things have changed, but that's where I sit today. This is the showroom that we have. It's a picture of me and my late dad. He passed away about 1.5 years ago. He passed away from COVID. And he taught me to never give up. And he taught me to be strong. And he taught me what it means to be a good dad. So yeah, there's Bianca and my 3 boys in our house now. You can see my boys were young there. I'll show you a few more pictures of them. These boys, Danny and Jake, are my twins, and little Raf. Here they are growing up. Here they are growing up a bit more. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys. I wanted to show you the book that I said, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I really recommend it. The Secret, I really, really recommend it. And then I wanted to read this to you, and then we'll finish off, okay? This is actually from my children's, Danny and Jake's school. They're at Bella Vista, a remedial school. They're identical twins, and they were both not so well when they were born, and it's led to some learning difficulties. So they need to be at a school that offers occupational therapy and all the rest. It's called Bella Vista. It's a wonderful, wonderful school. Anyway, I saw this on their. They posted this a long time ago, and I found it for you, and I wanted to read it to you. So it says, New York is 3 hours ahead of California, but that doesn't make California slow. Someone graduated at the age of 22, but waited 5 years before securing a good job. Someone became a CEO at 25, but he died at 50, while another became a CEO at 50 and lived to 90 years. Someone is still single, while someone else got married. Obama retired at 55, and Trump started at 70. Everyone in this world works based on their time zone. People around you might seem to be ahead of you, and some might seem to be behind you. But everyone is running their own race in their own time. Do not envy them and do not mock them. They are in their own time zone, and you are in yours. Life is about waiting for the right moment to act. So relax. You're not late. You're not early. You are very much on time. And I do think that is so prevalent to this NFT space. Everyone is chasing that Lambo and when this and when that. And, things in their right time. These things do not happen overnight. So I'll end up by just saying, for me, I hope that this video has brought you some value. I'm a very private person, and I've only shared this with you all because I really care. And I hope that this will inspire you on your journey and help you avoid being riskier than you can afford to be. If you've enjoyed this video and enjoy this type of content, please let me know in the comments below so I know whether this type of content is something I should do in future. And all I ask in return is for you to like and subscribe and come back again. So thank you everyone for your time. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Morad. I appreciate it, guys. So I'll see you soon. But yeah, this was really important to me, and I hope you've gotten some value out of it. Love you all.